Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Town Talk. I'm City Manager Scott Neal. This year, we planned a series of town talks around important topics included in the City of Edina's 2020-2021 budget work plan. The city has four primary budget goals. The first is a strong foundation. This is where we talk about how we maintain physical assets and infrastructure of the city. Number two is reliable service. This is where we maintain service levels that best meet the needs of the community. Number three is livable city, and this is where we plan for connected and sustainable development. And finally, number four is better together, and this is where we work to foster an inclusive and engaged community. Tonight's presentation will touch on some of the city's current sustainability initiatives and the climate action plan that's being developed. Sustainability Coordinator Grace Hancock will discuss building energy efficiency, transportation emission reduction, and initiatives in city operations and programs for residents and businesses. Grace will speak for 30 minutes. After her presentation, she will take questions. Also joining us tonight is Grace's supervisor, Engineering Director Chad Milner, and he will also be able to take questions. Tonight, we are going to try to use more of the features, an additional feature of WebEx Events. That's the platform that we're using for tonight's event. If you're watching online, you can use the raise your hand feature to let us know you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. Communications Director Jennifer Benarat will read those questions. If you have called in or are watching from home, please send an email with your question to Communications Director Jennifer Benarat at jbennerotte@edinamn.gov. Jennifer will read the questions for Grace and Chad to answer. We will end tonight's Town Talks when there are no more questions or at 8 p.m., whichever comes first. However, you can continue to ask questions and make comments online at bettertogetheredina.org for the next week. The online conversation closes Wednesday, May 26th. Now, I would like to formally introduce Grace Hancock. Grace joined our city staff and is our sustainability coordinator in October of 2020. Grace holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Oklahoma and a master's degree in environmental management from Duke University. She previously worked for the American Hiking Society, the Nature Conservancy, Trees Durham, DC Water, and Keep Oklahoma Beautiful. It's my pleasure to introduce Grace Hancock. Grace.
Thank you, Scott. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for having me tonight to share information on the different sustainability initiatives that are underway in Edina and to introduce the city's first climate action plan. I'm excited to share not only what's going on, but especially how you can be a part of Edina's environmental future. So what is sustainability and what does it look like in Edina? Sustainability in Edina is synonymous with community resilience. And this is the capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems within a city to survive, to adapt, and thrive no matter what kind of stresses or shocks they encounter. And community resilience ties directly to council value statements, which I've summarized here. These values encompass the themes of community engagement, equity, and environment. They guide Edina's sustainability work and help us stay grounded in not just what we're doing, but why. You'll notice a theme in these values of inclusion and everyone having the chance to be involved. I'll highlight tonight many ways for you to be involved in environmental work and creating a welcoming and sustainable Edina. Before we get into what Edina is up to in sustainability today, I want to share a little bit of history. Edina has a long-standing commitment to sustainability, some of which is here on this slide. In 2007, the city committed to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions 30% from the baseline by 2025. You might be wondering, what emissions are we talking about here? Greenhouse gas emissions just mean the kinds of gases that are released into the atmosphere from human activities. You might be familiar with carbon dioxide, methane, or nitrous oxide. These show up most often when we burn fossil fuels by putting gas in our cars or turning on the lights or heat. These gases build up in the atmosphere, warming the earth and disrupting weather patterns. These emission reduction goals, drive us today. So how does this all get done? The Energy and Environment Commission is a big part of this. This commission is made up of residents who advise council on energy conservation, waste reduction, and environmental and conservation efforts. This is the first opportunity that I'm highlighting for you to get involved. If you are a student, then commissioner applications are due June 1st, just a few weeks from now. And if you're interested in helping Edina businesses go green, consider applying to the working group by May 31st. As I mentioned, sustainability in Edina is really about community resilience. And community resilience is made up of two kinds of sustainability work: mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation relates to actions we can take to reduce emissions that cause climate change. Some examples are reducing the amount of energy that we need, using energy from renewable sources, or transitioning away from fossil-fueled transit. Many effects of climate change are already here, though, as Minnesotans were experiencing a warmer, wetter, and less predictable climate. This is where adaptation actions come in. Adaptation actions respond to climate change impacts. So this includes planting trees and expanding natural green space, increasing flood protection, and changing the way we manage waste. Edina is working in all of these arenas, so let's get into some specifics of what is underway. The first sustainability initiative I want to cover tonight is related to transportation. Transportation accounts for roughly 41% of emissions in Edina, and that number is growing. Transportation makes up a big part of Edina's greenhouse gas emissions, and exhaust from vehicles can cause respiratory issues. To respond to this challenge, the city is doing a couple of things. Your city government is leading the way and setting the example for more resilient activities by recently passing a green fleet policy, which aims to accelerate the transition of city-owned vehicles to electric and more efficient options. You might see these Edina-branded electric vehicles on the road doing regular city work. For community members, if you own an electric vehicle, you can plug into public chargers at City Hall, 50th and France, and soon at either Southdale or Grandview liquor store locations. Beyond personal vehicles, Edina is also rolling out alternative modes of transport. Maybe you've taken a Clover ride or enjoyed a bike lane. In the future, you might start to see electric car-sharing vehicles in the city as well. Building energy use makes up about 56% of our community greenhouse gas emissions, so it's the highest contributor. This is the energy used for electricity and heat at home, at work, and at school. The city has a few ways to support a transition to greater energy efficiency, saving you money and reducing our impact on the planet. This is an important point. Energy efficiency and other sustainability actions are good not only for the planet, but for your pocketbook as well. Through the Building Energy Benchmarking Ordinance, large buildings must report their energy use annually to the county for publication. And in 22, they'll start to undergo energy assessments to determine exactly what they can do to reduce their energy needs. For new construction, the city has partnered with the Center for Energy and Environment to develop a sustainable buildings policy to include energy efficiency from the start. And any business can work with the Energy and Environment Commission to join the Green Business Recognition Program, which promotes sustainable business practices and helps the business advertise their commitment. If you're a resident, we have many ways for you to reduce your energy costs and emissions. The first step many folks take is to request a home energy squad visit. These can be virtual or in person. A home energy squad visit comes with an assessment of your home's efficiency. You get free LED light bulbs, weather stripping, high efficiency water fixtures, and a programmable thermostat. If your household earns $100,000 or less, this visit is free. Otherwise, it's $35 to $50 since the city will split the cost with you. Beyond that, you can subscribe to renewable energy through Xcel Energy, which reduces your environmental impact and gets Xcel closer to its goal of being carbon neutral by 2050. One other note I'd like to highlight for the Home Energy Squad visits. Edina is participating this year in a new intercity challenge that runs through December. This challenge aims to see who among our surrounding cities can reach the highest participation in Home Energy Squad visits this year. This data on the screen is from the end of April, and Edina is highlighted with the blue box. You can see we're currently a little behind in Home Energy Squad visits, behind our neighbors in Northfield and St. Louis Park. So if you haven't had a Home Energy Squad visit before, I highly encourage you to sign up on Edina's sustainability site or at the link on the slide. So there are two ways to lower our impact on the planet. We can reduce energy needs by improving efficiency, and we can get our energy from fossil fuel-free sources. The city is committed to renewable energy generation and is actively exploring ways to install more solar in Edina. To date, the city sources roughly a third of its electricity needs from solar subscriptions and offers one community solar garden on our Public Works building to help residents access clean energy. Beyond offering renewable energy to residents, local energy generation in the form of solar arrays also increases our resilience to extreme weather events, providing an alternative energy source if the larger power grid goes out. While emissions from waste are not very high, waste management has a big impact on our ability to adapt to a changed climate. You probably tuned in to the city's town talk on organics recycling a few weeks ago, so I'll keep it short here. Organics recycling reduces our reliance on landfills, which emit methane gas, a potent greenhouse gas. Organics recycling results in compost, which can be used in place of fertilizer across the city of Edina, reducing our reliance on the limited supply of phosphorus and providing a non-toxic alternative to chemical treatments that are safe for pets, plants, and children. The compost can be used as a soil amendment to strengthen trees, stream banks, and provide pollinator habitat to help manage our waterways. So organics recycling is really a win for everyone. When it comes to adapting to a changed climate, the biggest changes we're seeing in Minnesota is a higher risk of flood and hot days or extreme heat events. You can see the graph on the left highlights increased precipitation in the area in recent decades. This graph is from the recently approved Hennepin County Climate Action Plan. The link on the screen will take you to the Morningside Project website, which is an example of how the city is rethinking its relationship to water. We have many resources on the city website to help you prepare for flood risk or to help your neighbors prepare by adopting a storm drain, for instance. When it comes to extreme heat and flood, trees help us address both of these issues. We will talk more about this later, but you can see here some of the benefits and processes of healthy trees. Cities, because they are built up with buildings and streets made of concrete and other impervious materials, tend to be warmer than surrounding areas and trap air pollution more easily. Trees and open green space can help reduce this urban heat island effect. They reduce air pollution, including carbon dioxide, and of course can absorb stormwater during big rains, which improves our resilience to flooding. Plus, they're beautiful and provide plant and animal habitat. You might have recently participated in the city's tree pickup and also received some free compost to help nurture it. So thank you for doing your part and be on the lookout for more opportunities like this. So this is what we've been up to, but what's next and how can you be a part? We saw this graphic just a little bit ago, but I wanted to remind us about these terms as we talk about Edina's emerging climate action plan. The City of Edina is developing its first climate action plan for the community. The plan will help those who live and work in Edina imagine and achieve a future where the earth and all who live on it thrive. It involves setting a baseline understanding of where we are today, partnering with the community to hear about your experiences and priorities, and finalizing an action plan to tackle the climate challenge. A climate action plan gives the Edina community a chance to systematically assess the issue, understand the impacts, and determine a plan of action together to ensure everyone continues to enjoy a healthy and livable city. So, what's climate change? NASA says that climate change is the change in usual weather found in a place. Weather can change in just a few hours, but climate takes hundreds or even millions of years to change. The difference between weather and climate is a measure of time. Weather is what conditions of the atmosphere are over a short period of time, and climate is how the atmosphere behaves over relatively long periods of time. When Edina talks about climate change, this refers specifically to the rapid warming of the Earth's temperature, which impacts natural systems and makes them harder to predict and respond to for people, plants, and animals. In Minnesota, this warming means that we have fewer cold days and more hot ones, and the climate is getting wetter year-round. Edina's Climate Action Plan addresses the impacts of these changes on 9 different sectors here on the right, from the economy to environmental equity to opportunities for local food. In my final slides, I'll talk about what we know already about climate change in Edina and how you can be involved. This Climate Action Plan is being developed by your neighbors. The Climate Action Planning team came together in April to begin the process to collaboratively co-create the city's plan with technical advice from city staff and a facilitator. The group is made up of residents, workers, business, and institutional representatives. You can see the full list on Better Together Edina. This group meets monthly and reports to the Energy and Environment Commission on progress. The EEC shares information with City Council and will ultimately recommend a plan for adoption in December. Throughout, I and Pale Blue Dot, who is our facilitator, helps to keep things moving and on track, while you, the community, are invited to provide input at key points. Understanding where we are today is the first step. We have just completed these documents, which you can review on Better Together Edina, and I'll talk about more here. These reports include a greenhouse gas inventory, a climate vulnerability assessment, and preliminary studies on Edina's tree cover and renewable energy potential. You can read the full reports on Better Together Edina. So let's start with the baseline. The climate baseline tells us an important story. In the last 40 years, we've seen a lot of changes in Minnesota, and you can see some of these on the left. By 2100, these trends will get more intense. For example, in the last 40 years, we've seen a slight increase of number of days above 95 each year. But by 2100, we can expect 50 more days over 95 each year. This leads to more energy use to air condition our homes, as well as longer allergy and insect seasons. So these are the kinds of tangible impacts we want to manage and respond to using the Climate Action Plan. But we can't only focus on the impacts, we also need to understand what's driving them. And this is what a greenhouse gas inventory helps us do. We conducted an inventory for 2013, 2016, and 2019 to compare. You can see some of the results here. Community-wide total emissions for the city of Edina have decreased slightly from 2013 to 2019. And this reduction in emissions occurred even as Edina's economy grew. Between 2013 and 2019, the city was able to decrease its greenhouse gas emissions by 1.5%, while growing its economy by an estimated 16.8%. So that's good news. On the right, you can get a little bit deeper and see a breakdown of our 2019 greenhouse gas emissions. Like we talked about, energy is 56% of our emissions in Edina, and this is electricity and heating fuel. This number has decreased around 10% since 2013, largely because Xcel Energy has incorporated more solar and wind energy into their electricity supply. Transportation is 41% of our emissions. Since 2013, miles traveled by vehicles in Edina have increased about 13% per household. So there's some work we can do there. Solid waste, which includes trash to the landfill, increased quite a bit from 2013 by 20%. However, recycling and organics recycling has also increased. Finally, water and wastewater saw a 20% reduction in gallons of water used from 2013 to 2019, which correlates with a slight reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Here's one more way to look at it. Since 2007, we have reduced emissions 9%. And we have some options for how to move forward, which you can see pointed out by the arrows on the graph. To be in line with Hennepin County, Edina can aim for net zero emissions by 2050 to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Right now, our current goals are to limit warming to 2 degrees Celsius, but we are not on track to meet this. A plan will help us assess these goals and get back on track. So what's the difference between 1.5 versus 2 degrees Celsius? It's a big one. The World Resources Institute cataloged some of these differences, which you can see here, and I know it's a lot to take in. In Minnesota, we are already feeling the change in extreme heat and in ecosystem shifts. While we don't have coral reefs or an ocean nearby, you might hope to vacation near a reef someday. And as sea levels rise, we can expect coastal communities to move inward seeking drier ground. So all of these impacts affect everyone, no matter where we are. The next piece is to connect these impacts with who and what systems are most at risk, so we can focus on how to adapt. Climate vulnerability means the degrees to which a system is susceptible to or unable to cope with adverse effects of climate change, including climate variability and extremes. Climate vulnerability is the balance of impacts and ways that a community can adapt. In Edina, the city is considering how our infrastructure, from roads to basements to electric systems, might respond to these impacts, as well as who in the community might most be at risk because of pre-existing health conditions, access to green space, or other characteristics. The city is also considering the economic opportunities that come when we shift thinking toward planning for the future. Edina's climate vulnerability assessment looked at the balance of impacts, which are on the far left, and who is most vulnerable where. Based on this study, Edina is most sensitive to extreme weather and air quality, followed by flood, food insecurity, and power failure. To understand a little bit about these, for extreme weather, Minnesota is experiencing more and more severe storms and flooding. When it comes to extreme temperature, Minnesota is experiencing more hot days and fewer very cold days than in the past. For air quality, in Edina, we have the urban heat island effect, which means that it's warmer in the city than surrounding less dense areas. And who is most vulnerable to these impacts? When we talk about vulnerability, we are talking about who is at the highest risk of being impacted while having the least ability to respond. Most vulnerable community members in Edina are elders, people of color, and those with lower incomes. Based on where we are seeing these impacts show up and where most vulnerable residents live, we know not only what to do, but who needs to be at the table as we discuss what to do to help our neighbors in Edina. So the map on the right indexes these impacts and vulnerabilities to prioritize where the city should take climate action. The darker the color, the higher priority for climate action an area is. So here's a little bit of the what. This is just one example of a climate action: trees. Edina has a tree canopy that covers almost 36% of the land area, which is good. But notice the graphs on the right. One at the top shows the amount of dark pavement or buildings and their roofs. And also notice that the vast majority of our open green space, 93%, is turf grass or lawns. As we've talked about a little bit, climate change increases the risk of flooding, urban heat island, higher energy bills, and the cost to replace property. These risks are not evenly felt across our community. But Edina is committed to equity, and this includes the city's response to the inequities of these effects. For instance, the areas of Edina with more residents experiencing economic distress, or the more low to moderate income census tracts at the top of the graph on the left, also have the least amount of tree and grass cover, which you can see in green, while having the most pavement and building impervious surfaces in gray and yellow. This increases their vulnerability, but it also means that these census tracts will benefit the most from receiving more trees to help shade, absorb floodwaters, and clean the air. So this is one example of the kinds of actions that the climate action planning team is considering and what you will have a chance to weigh in on later this year. Another way we can plan now for a more resilient future is to generate local energy through fossil fuel-free sources. Solar arrays can be installed on the roof, parking canopies, or on the ground. They can increase local energy generation, which helps us maintain resilience during storms, and they provide options for residents who want to install their own solar power arrays or subscribe to a local solar garden. Local solar energy also increases the number of jobs through construction and maintenance needs. Through our preliminary renewable energy potential report, there is an equity component for this strategy too. Nearly 10% of residents in Edina have an income less than 60% of the area median income, which the census considers low to moderate income. 30% of these households endure an energy burden, which means that their energy bills account for more than 6% of their income. But these households also have the potential to generate around a third of Edina's solar energy, around 30 million kilowatt hours per year. This can lower those homes' energy bills an average of $2,800 per year. So supporting local solar installation helps improve our economy, the environment, and community well-being. So you just saw a few examples of climate action strategies, but this is a community climate action plan, and there are many ways for you to plug in and be a part of the conversation. We have a community-wide survey, which is open on Better Together Edina until June 6th. We also have a survey and a storytelling project for young people to share their opinions and visions for what kind of Edina they want to see in the future. Come see us at the farmers market to tell your story this summer. The EEC will have a booth. And be on the lookout for a chance to comment on the draft plan later in September or consider joining a listening session. With that, I want to thank you and remind you to check out Better Together or the City of Edina website, and I welcome your questions.
Great. Thanks, Grace. Grace will now stand for questions. If you are watching online, use the raise your hand feature to let us know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, and then you will be introduced to speak. Please be sure to direct your questions. If you would like to email your questions in, please be sure to direct them to Communications Director Jennifer Benarott, or all panelists, as Jennifer is monitoring the questions and will read them. If you have called in or are watching from home, please send an email with your questions to Communications Director Jennifer Benarott, JBENNEROTTE @edinamn.gov. Jennifer will read the questions for Grace and Chad to answer. We're happy to take any questions now. Jennifer?
Our first question tonight comes from Brad. Brad says, I have been in touch with the Edina School Board regarding school bus electrification. They say it's on their radar, but not yet a priority. Is there a collaborative, aligned relationship between Edina City and schools on specific initiatives like this and sustainability in general? What is the best way to move forward together?
Thanks, Brad. That's a great question. Two things I'll note. One is that I think that there's great opportunity for the school district and the city to work more closely together on sustainability initiatives. One of the key ways for us to do that is to partner in the development of the climate action plan. It's a community climate action plan that includes the school district. The other way that I see an opportunity for us to partner is on funding. The city is always looking for grant opportunities, especially to help fund these more innovative opportunities like bus electrification. So I could see there being a chance for the city to offer some grant writing support and recommendation support on such an initiative.
Thank you, Grace. I don't have any other questions at this time. For those attendees who are logged into WebEx, you can either use the raise your hand feature and then I will unmute your line, or you can use the Q&A tab to pose your question like Brad did. If you are calling in or watching live on television or Facebook Live, you can, again, email me your question at jbennerott@edinamn.gov. That's JBENNEROTTE at edinamn.gov, G-O-V. Because there is a slight delay in the broadcast, I think we'll wait a minute before closing up for tonight, because I'm hopeful we'll get another question or two, though, Grace, your presentation was fantastic. And while we wait, is there anything Chad or Scott would like to add about the initiative?
Chad?
Yeah, I would just reinforce what Grace has mentioned for the community tonight. Take advantage. We're not going to be creating a climate action plan very often. This is our opportunity this year to do that. So if you have any interest in being involved in guiding the city in this endeavor, please participate. There's many avenues to do that. We have the survey. We have lots of other things where we'll be coming to you. So take advantage of it, take the opportunity, and help us develop this climate action plan that we're going to be using for a long time.
The only thing I'll add to what Chad said is that we do a quality of life survey in Edina every other year, so in odd numbered years. So we're doing one right now. And when we ask our public, the residents of Edina, to kind of prioritize what they think is important, this is environmental programs, environmental concerns are at the top of that list every time we ask that question. So because it's at the top of the list for our residents, it's at the top of the list for city government too. And that's really what drives a lot of our interest and our activities in this area.
Thank you both. I still don't have any questions. So Scott, I think you can wrap it up.
Okay. Well, that's all for tonight. As a reminder, you can continue to ask questions and make comments about the city's sustainability initiatives online at bettertogether.org for the next week. The online conversation closes Wednesday, May 26th. Our next Town Talk will be at 7 p.m. Wednesday, July 26th, and Race and Equity Coordinator Heidi Lee will discuss the city's race and equity work. You can watch online or on Edina TV or come in person to Edina City Hall. Thank you to Chad and to Grace and to all the folks that worked to put this on, and have a great night. Good night.